Hello again, everyone. Edwin Lerner back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Chiron sextile or trine one's natal Pluto. Now, this transit may be expressed in physical, emotional wounds, helping and healing others, depleted self-esteem, being in harmony with power, control, transformation, passion, and desire. Now, I'm going to elaborate and expound on that. Well, this transit, what it is, it's not about having a passion or desire, for things that are associated with Chiron, such as depleted self-worth and physical and emotional wounds, but it could be having the passion, desire to heal those wounds, or to help others in the suffering that you may have difficulty in helping yourself in. Say if the transit Chiron is in Scorpio, it could be a death. It could be issues with an inheritance or will. Maybe it has to do with making major transformation, or its inability to handle a crisis, as some examples. Now, I want to state though is that the transit of Chiron, and this is making a sextile or trine to natal Pluto. The transit of Chiron, naturally, it doesn't supplant or replace your natal Chiron. Your natal Chiron is there with you for the entirety and duration of your life, and that will always be there, and always have an impact on you. The transit of Chiron, though, that will have an effect. Could have an effect during the time of the transit, but not, of course, through the course of your life. It's a time too. I want to also state that some of you may wonder, what is the difference between the sextile and trine aspect, contrast to the conjunction aspect? Well, the transit of Chiron, making a sextile or a trine to the natal Pluto, it's an auspicious aspect. It's positive. It's a good harmony and blending of the astrological, energies, and it forms a good relationship. Now, when you have, the conjunction. Now, the conjunction aspect is neutral. You can have good and bad qualities, and it's very intensifying, integrating, and amalgamating. It's a strong concentration of energy. But when you have the transit of Chiron, making a conjunction to the natal Pluto, in some cases it may manifest in having, could be physical related suffering associated with Pluto, such as, it could be something with the colon, the prostate, the bladder, the reproductive system, the urinary tract. It could even indicate, surgery, because, transit Chiron, is associated with, physical wounds, and Pluto with surgery. And, if you have the sextile and trine, it doesn't mean surgery couldn't happen then, but it could be more auspicious for actually taking care of an issue through surgery. And it's about having more power and control in taking care of any physical and emotional suffering you may be enduring at the time of this transit. So the thing is, you have, as far as this transit goes, it can be, again, could be a very positive and auspicious aspect for getting power and control over physical and emotional suffering at this time. So transit Chiron is in Aquarius. You might have some issues that you're dealing with, as far as integrating in society, or something with groups, clubs, organizations, friendships. You might feel ostracized by others, but this is a time to get more power and control over the issue, as an example, having more passion and desire to actually deal with it. It can also be a time as well, anatomically speaking, again, Pluto is connected with the colon, the prostate, the bladder, the urinary tract, and reproductive system. So this could be a time when it might be very auspicious for dealing with that at this time. And if you have any issues with that, to help and heal, those issues. And Chiron can be, have a connection with healers. So even if it's through primary care physician, or if you need, if there's some kind of surgery that needs to be done, it can be a time where if there's any procrastination or hesitation on those matters, it can come to an end, and it's more of a time to get it taken care of with little delays, diversions, or distractions. So it's also in the time when this transit takes place, it's also more of that opportunity, I would say, to have that passion and desire, to deal, with any suffering you may be dealing with, or any, it could even be just a feeling of ineptitude or weakness in your life at this time. If you have say the transit Chiron in the zodiac sign Cancer and or the fourth house, it can be something family related. You might be feeling some condemnation, by family, or there's some suffering. Sometimes it could be physical issues. It could be a contentious situation, with somebody on the home front. It can be a time as well where, since Pluto is about transformation, it can be about just making a positive transformation, in your life, which may help alleviate if there's any physical or emotional suffering, especially on an emotional level, psychological level. Um, Transformation health-wise, say if you have the natal Pluto in the sixth house, or even in the first house of the physical body, it could be making some physical-related change, health-related change that can it might help you deal with some physical-related suffering. It could be through rehab even, as an example. But another thing too is that it's also a time where, if you're a spiritual person, people that are spiritual, if you're in some, religious congregation, they may be, as an example, they may be beneficial to you in dealing with the crisis or some upheavals you may be going through in your life at this time. And it's also a time, if you've been victimized by a crime or some coercion or bullying at this time, this is a time where it's about being able to help, and to being able to help yourself maybe, and healing yourself. I would say even more especially if the transit Chiron is retrograde, because that's really about self-healing. And the thing about this transit as well, this does take place, it's about dealing with any physical or emotional suffering. It could be weakness, ineptitude, whatever your deepest pain may be at this time. This is where you could deal with it with more emotional intensity. Now, I'm going to use the transit, as an example, because my natal placement actually, Chiron. Let's say if transit Chiron is in Aries in the 12th house, you could be dealing with some suffering, maybe emotional suffering due to lack of, it could be courage or confronting, which is Aries. It could be hidden adversaries, which is the 12th house. People that may have been, posing as friends, impersonating themselves as friends, but were really, enemies, as an example, or just simply difficulty in taking action to work through limitations. Um, Isolation is another example, because isolation and limitations, of course, are connected with the 12th house in astrology, and it might be a time where you could be trying to deal with that with a little more emotional intensity, as an example. Now, also, in the time of this transit, it could be very positive for helping and healing, which is Chiron, others through support, whether it's emotional, moral, or monetary support, which is Pluto. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal Pluto is in the second house, it could be support, which is Pluto. It could be of a monetary nature and connected with possessions, which is the second house. Helping others, maybe by giving them some of your possessions, helping them monetarily, as some examples. Also, too, issues with depleted self-esteem, which is Chiron, may be dealt with by simply making a major change or transformation, which is Pluto. If Pluto is in the ninth house, as an example, it could be just simply transforming, which is Pluto. It could be a religion, it could be a philosophy or belief, which is the ninth house. It's also a time where it can be propitious to deal with suffering, which is Chiron, and being assisted. It could be by someone you're in an intimate relationship with, or a shared resources scenario with, which is Pluto. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, it also could be a time where, let's say, as an example, what I just stated before, Chiron, say, is in, Gemini in the 12th house. It could be, there might have been some suffering due to gossip, theft, slander, which is Gemini, and it could be tied into secret sorrows, which is the 12th house, and those things may be aided or assisted by people you may be in an intimate relationship with, and again, or shared resources scenario with. Now, also to physical and emotional trauma, which is Chiron, you may be able to deal with that with more passion and desire, which is Pluto. Now, let's say if you have your natal, let's say if the transit of Chiron, let's say, it's in Taurus in the 6th house. It could be some physical related issues with the throat, the neck, the thyroid, the esophagus, as some examples. Health-related issues, I should say, physical health-related issues. If that was in the 1st or 6th house, I would say that could apply. 1st house is a physical body. 6th house corresponds with physical health-related matters. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Leonard saying stay well.